Today I'll be talking about all the horror movies I watched during the first 13 days of October. So let's rock this. Hi everyone, how you doing? Welcome back. I'm Fuzz, and today I've got a 31 Days of Horror Challenge update for you guys, where I'll be going over all the horror movies I've watched so far this month, whether it be on physical media or via streaming. October tends to be the one time of year for me personally where I will actually take advantage of streaming and watch a lot more titles via streaming in order to discover horror films that I'd never seen before. Normally, I don't really stream movies all that much. I'm usually watching physical media. Most of the time, if it's a movie that I think I'm going to like, and it's a movie I've never seen before, but it sounds like something I'm going to like, I'd just much rather buy it on physical media for my first time viewing rather than watching it via streaming. But during my October horror marathon, it's a completely different story. And I probably end up streaming more movies in the month of October than I do the entire rest of the year combined. That's how little I use streaming most of the time. I'm usually previewing so many new horror movies during this time to see if I want to add them to my collection that it's just not realistic for me to purchase them all on physical media during that period of time. Nor would I necessarily want to. Some horror movies I enjoy watching once and I have fun with them when I watch them, but I don't necessarily need to watch those movies again, let alone add them to my physical media collection. So for the movies on today's watch list that I streamed, I'll also be letting you guys know which ones I enjoyed enough to actually purchase on physical media in one form or another at some point in the future. And by the way, for those wondering, I have about 3 or 4 streaming services that I use for horror titles. Like I said, I don't watch them very often throughout the rest of the year, but when October comes, they tend to get a lot of use from me. And that's especially true of Shudder. If you're looking for a good horror streaming service, I definitely recommend Shudder. It's pretty cheap, and they have a great selection of titles. That's my main one. I also use like HBO and Showtime and Amazon Prime Video, but Shudder's a really great deal because I think it's only like $6 a month or $7 a month or something like that. You can get it as an add-on to your Amazon Prime Video account, or you can just go to like their website, shudder.com, and get like a standalone account via their website directly. But Shudder's a great service, a great streaming service for discovering horror films that you've never seen before. And I find it to be very valuable during the month of October when I'm doing this horror marathon. Now, before we get into this list, I just want to offer my apologies for the delay in content and getting some new content out over the last couple weeks. I had to step away from the channel for about a week. We had a death in the family, in the immediate family, and we had to travel out of state for the funeral, and we were gone for the better part of a week. So of course, as you would expect, I wasn't really able to do much with the channel while I was gone, and outside of just streaming a few horror movies late at night whenever I had some spare time. So I had a bit of a slow start on my 31 Days of Horror Challenge this time around. But since I've been back, I have had a few days to catch up now, and I was able to get some movies watched in over the last, 4 or 5 days or so since I've been back, because I wanted to have something to share with you guys, right? I wanted to make sure I had enough titles to make this video robust enough, right, to make it worth doing. So the last few days I've been cramming in a bunch of horror movies, watching all kinds of horror movies, and I'm going to share all those with you guys today. Okay, before I get into this list, we do have a new Fuzz Club member that I want to give a quick shout out to, Agapito Torres. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. But Agapito Torres just became the latest member of the Fuzz Club. Agapito, thank you so much for your support of the channel. I really appreciate the added support. And I do look forward to chatting with you in comments in the future at some point. But your support means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. So thank you. And if any of you would like to know more about the Fuzz Club, there is a link in the description below, or you can just click that join button and all the membership information will come up for you. All right, so without any further ado, let's get right into this horror watch list. And starting off with October 1st, I had one movie that I was able to watch that day, and that one movie was The Hitcher on 4K. This is the new Second Sight Films 4K limited edition box set. It is completely stacked and packed. And yeah, this was really fun. I'm not going to say too much about this movie right now because I actually have a 4K review of this edition coming in my very next video, which should be out in a few days. I'll be doing a 4K takeaways installment where I'll be discussing this and a few other titles, offering my reviews of those titles. So I don't want to say too much about this right now, but I will say this was a first-time watch for me, and I really enjoyed it. I remember this movie playing on cable TV back in the late 80s, and for whatever reason, I never got around to watching it, but until now, right? So, but I really enjoyed it. Great movie. Had a lot of fun with this, and I'm still kind of working on going through the special features and whatnot. But the movie itself, the 4K looked fantastic. So, and that's about all I'll say about this for right now. I'll get into more detail on this in my next video. But yeah, on October 1st, I watched The Hitcher, and it was awesome. On October 2nd, I wasn't really able to watch anything that day. That was the day before we were about to head out of town, so we were up late getting packed for our trip, and we had to get up super early the next morning to get to the airport. And so I didn't really have time to watch anything that night. It wasn't really a good night for taking in a new horror movie. I did put in Alien for about 45 minutes at the end of the night just to have something like a comfort film to veg out on for a little bit, but I didn't even get all the way through that. And so I certainly wouldn't add that in my total here today. But, and I watch Alien 2 or 3 times a year anyway. So, so I don't really count Alien, especially since I only watched about 45 minutes of it that night before I had to go to bed. But yeah, so October 2nd was the only day on this list where I didn't get to anything. I didn't have any films that I was able to watch that day. Moving right along to October 3rd, another comfort movie here, one that I talked about in my last video, my most rewatchable horror staples, and that was, again, I had just gotten into town. We were out of town. We'd been traveling all day, and we just got to our destination. And so I was pretty wiped. I really wasn't in the mood to concentrate on anything that I hadn't actually seen before. So I needed another comfort movie, and that comfort movie was Event Horizon. Not going to say much about this because I just talked about this in my last video, and I have talked about it quite a bit on the channel. But great 4K from Paramount, and yeah, I just had to. Of course, I watched it on streaming on October 3rd because I was away from my collection. I was out of town, of course, but you know, that's fine. I just needed something to chill out on and veg out on that night. I really didn't have, I was pretty wiped. I didn't really have the energy to take in a new to me horror film. So I just needed something comforting that I knew like the back of my hand. And Event Horizon, that was the title for that day. So yeah, October 3rd, Event Horizon. Okay, and on October 4th, I watched a killer movie that I was really happy about. I was really happy to have discovered this film, and I'm talking about Late Night with the Devil. What a great film. This is my kind of horror movie. I absolutely love this horror movie, and I streamed it. I think this was on Shudder, and I believe there is a Blu-ray that was just released. I don't think they've released it on 4K, and I'm not sure if that's going to be coming at some point or not. But I believe they just released a Blu-ray within the last, I think, couple weeks. So if you want to get it on Blu-ray, it should be out there and available. But I watched it on streaming for my first watch, and I just loved it. This is kind of a retro throwback film, 1970s. It's about a fictional late-night talk show host who is competing with Johnny Carson. And in order to get the ratings that he needs in order to beat Johnny Carson, he decides to do this special Halloween episode where a bunch of crazy stuff happens. And I'll just leave it at that, but it's absolutely worth watching, especially if you're a fan of the 70s and 80s type horror films. This is a total throwback to, you know, like 70s horror. Even the aspect ratio of the film is in like 4:3, that kind of square, boxy looking thing to fit our 1977 TVs, right? But I had a blast with Late Night with the Devil, and I'm definitely going to be purchasing this on physical media at some point in the near future. I'll probably not get around to buying it until next year now since I just watched it, but I definitely plan to pick this one up at some point in the future. And you can stream it on Shudder if you want to see it. And if you don't want to if you don't want to commit to purchasing it on physical media yet and want to preview it like I did, check it out on Shudder. But great film, and yeah, I just really enjoyed it. It's my kind of horror film. It's exactly the kind of film that I look for when I'm looking to discover new horror films for my collection. So yeah, I just really enjoyed this film and had a blast with it. So yeah, for October 4th, I watched Late Night with the Devil. On October 5th, I streamed another film that I've been meaning to watch for a while now. It's a 2022 film that I had been planning on watching, but just never got around to it until now. But the movie Watcher, starring Micah Monroe, who I love Micah Monroe. She's great. If you don't know who she is, she starred in It Follows, and which, of course, a great movie. But I've really enjoyed watching her in other movies. She was in It Follows. She was in The Guest. She's been in quite a few things, and in fact, she's actually working on a sequel to It Follows, or apparently there's going to be a sequel to It Follows at some point, so I look forward to that as well. But Watcher was kind of an interesting movie. It's very much a slow burn, kind of a slow burn thriller. This is one I will say I will probably not be purchasing this on physical media. This is not one that I need to purchase on physical media. I did enjoy watching it, like for a one-time viewing, but this is a classic example of why I would use streaming, right? You know, I use streaming so that I can discover new horror movies that I might actually enjoy, but don't necessarily want to add to my collection. And Watcher was like that for me. I enjoyed the film for what it was, but there really wasn't a whole lot to it. It was, you know, it's definitely a slow burn. The only problem is there wasn't a whole lot of payoff at the end. There's a little bit of payoff, but not a big payoff at the end. There really wasn't that much to the movie. And while it was fairly entertaining while I was watching it, it's not the kind of movie that I would return to. I'm glad I watched it and I had fun with it, but you know, I'm pretty much done with it. It's not something that I need to own, assuming I don't even think there is a physical media release of it. So yeah, I watched Watcher on October 5th. Moving right along to October 6th, I watched Barbarian, another 2022 film. Now, this one I'd actually seen before. This is one of the few titles on this list I had actually seen before. I watched it when it first came out, or around the time that it first came out, and I really enjoyed it. And I was just in the mood to revisit it. You know, at this time, October 6th, I was still in a different state. I was away from my collection, so all I had was streaming, and I just got in the mood to watch Barbarian again. And it's a great film with Justin Long in it, and yeah, fun film, and that is one that I would like to buy on physical media at some point. I've now seen it a couple times, and I would still buy it on physical media because I just think it's a really solid horror film. So if you've never seen Barbarian, that's one I would definitely recommend. What was that, a Netflix movie? At first, I can't remember. I watched it on Shudder, but I don't know if it originally appeared on Netflix or whatnot, but it's on Shudder right now. I believe it was Shudder that it was on. It might be one of the other streaming services I use. I always associate everything with Shudder, but yeah, Barbarian. If you haven't seen it, you should definitely check this one out. It's a really fun film. On October 7th, I watched a relatively new release on 4K, and that is Longlegs. Also starring Micah Monroe again. She's great in this. And Nicolas Cage is in this, and he was amazing in this. Now, I don't want to say too much about this one because I think I'm going to be including this in my next 4K takeaways video as well, in which case I'll go into more detail then. But this was a fun film. If you like films like Silence of the Lambs, this is that kind of film. I mean, it's not exactly like it. It's not like just a ripoff of it, but the tone, the mood of Silence of the Lambs, this kind of evokes that. It kind of captures that mood and tone of Silence of the Lambs. But just a great movie. I had a lot of fun with this. Bit of a slow burn at first, but boy, does that last half hour or so get really interesting. The last half hour, 40 minutes, something like that. Yeah, it's just great stuff. So if you haven't seen this one, it's also available on streaming. I can't remember where. It might be on Shudder as well. But if you haven't seen this one, I would definitely recommend checking it out. And I was really glad that I picked this up on physical media. Of course, it was a blind buy, but that's okay. It's one of those blind buys that worked out real well for me. And so I'm glad that it is now in my collection. So yeah, great stuff. Long Legs on October 7th for me. Okay, next up we have October 8th, and I was able to watch 2 movies on that day. This was my first day back from our trip, so I had a little bit more time to watch horror titles. The first title I watched that day via streaming was Wes Craven's Cursed, starring Christina Ricci and Joshua Jackson and Jesse Eisenturd. And I was actually able to stomach Jesse Eisenturd for this movie. I actually thought his role was, and his acting was fairly appropriate for the role in the film, right? I thought, yeah, I was kind of surprised I was actually able to stomach him this time, but it was a fun film. I really enjoyed Cursed. This is one I've been meaning to watch for a while, and I'm hoping we get a Scream Factory 4K at some point. I know they put out a Blu-ray at one point, but I definitely think I will be buying this one on 4K when and if it gets released on 4K. I think I might have seen something somewhere about it maybe getting a 4K release, but I could see Scream Factory doing that, right? I mean, that's their MO, right? A lot of, lately, the last couple years, they've been reissuing a lot of their older titles that they had on Blu-ray. They've been reissuing them on 4K. So I fully expect that we'll probably get Cursed on 4K at some point as well, especially considering it is a Wes Craven film. So, but a great little film, a werewolf film. I was definitely in a werewolf mood. I always liked Christina Ricci. I've never really seen her do anything that I didn't like. She's always been a really good actor, I think. And like I said, I was even able to tolerate Jesse Eisenturd for this movie. It was a fun movie, and this is one I will definitely be picking up on physical media at some point in the future. So if you're a big fan of werewolf-type movies, but you've never seen Cursed, this is one I would definitely recommend. It was a lot of fun. And then the second title I watched on that day was Chopping Mall from 1986. I actually bought this Blu-ray last year. I had seen the film before, but I hadn't actually watched my Blu-ray since owning it. I bought the Blu-ray, I think, shortly before spooky season last year, and then just never got around to watching it or something. But I had seen the movie before via streaming, so it was nice to watch it on Blu-ray for the first time. And this is a fun movie. You got Kelly Maroney in this. You got Barbara Crampton in this, about some malfunctioning robots at a mall and people trying to escape these malfunctioning robots. It's a pretty cheesy film, but I had a lot of fun with it, and I enjoyed revisiting it this time around. So yeah, Chopping Mall for my other title on October 8th. Okay, now for October 9th, I was able to watch 2 films on this day as well. And the first one was a new 4K release of Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker from Severin Films. I gotta be honest with you guys. This is the only title on this list today that I might actually regret picking up on 4K. I'm not sure I would have purchased this movie on physical media had I seen it beforehand. Now, I didn't totally dislike it. It was still fairly entertaining, but it's a pretty twisted movie, and it just kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I think it's the aunt, the person who plays his aunt in this, the woman in this is just super creepy and really despicable, and I just found her really repelling. You know, the character, you know, the performance, I just like, yeah, I found the aunt in this to just be really sick and twisted and kind of off-putting, right? And so I kind of had a hard time with the movie for that reason, you know? She was the main reason I didn't really care for the movie. I just didn't care for her, right? The character, the actress, her performance, the whole 9 yards. I just didn't really like her. In fact, I think it's probably fair to say that she bugged the shit out of me. So yeah, I found her performance a little hard to stomach, but I still enjoyed the movie somewhat. I mean, there were definitely some things in it that were redeeming. There were some good moments in it, but overall, this would have probably been the kind of film that I would have streamed and then not felt the need to pick up on physical media. So, well, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. So don't be surprised if this ends up in a Blind Buy Regrets video at some point in the future. So yeah, Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. And then also on that day, I was able to watch my new copy of Maxine. And this I absolutely loved. As I suspected it would be, I felt like this was probably the best out of the Ty West trilogy between X, Pearl, and Maxine. I definitely like Maxine the most out of the three. So, but a really great film. I didn't see it in the theater, so this was my first time watching it. And I won't say too much here about this because I think I might include this in one of my next two 4K takeaways videos. So I've got actually two 4K takeaways installments coming probably in the next week and a half. So a lot of new 4K releases, and I definitely wanted to dive into a little bit more detail in some of these. And I think I'm going to be including Maxine as well in that batch. But this was a great movie, just a lot of fun. You know, Mia Goth is amazing. She's a great actress. I really like her. I think she's really talented. And, you know, I haven't really seen her in much of anything else, I don't believe. But certainly in the Ty West trilogy here, I have definitely loved what I've seen from her in these movies. So, yeah, great actress. So yeah, Maxine was what, October 9th? Yes, that was the other title I watched on October 9th. So, yeah, Maxine. By the way, if you're enjoying the content on this channel, do me a favor and please consider subscribing to the channel. And if you do, don't forget to activate that notification bell as well so you can be alerted when I'm posting videos that you might be interested in. Also, don't forget to like the video as well. It does help with the algorithm and the channel's visibility on YouTube. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. All right, moving right along to October 10th, I had time to watch 3 movies that day, and the first of which was a revisit, a rewatch. I think I bought this about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, and watched it when I first got it, and then, you know, rewatched it on October 10th. But a fun little creature film, and I'm talking about The Kindred from 1987 here. This is a Synapse Films Blu-ray release, and if you know anything about Synapse Films, they always do great work on their restorations. And this is a cool little like genetic experiment creature type flick, and I won't say much more beyond that, but it is a fun film and one that I very much enjoyed and had fun revisiting it. So only my second time watching it, but definitely enjoyed it. So if you haven't seen The Kindred before, this is one I definitely recommend if you happen to be a fan of like creature flicks, right? Creature flicks, one of my favorite horror subgenres. So I enjoy films like this. So yeah, The Kindred. And then also on that day, I watched my copy of Night Screams from Vinegar Syndrome, which I have their 4K release here. Although I didn't watch the 4K theatrical version of this film because I knew they had kind of messed with the film, right, to pad it out and extend the runtime. So they inserted scenes from graduation day in there and did some loops or something to try and pad out the time. And so I didn't really want to see that version. I wanted to see the version that was more in line with what the filmmakers originally intended, right? And they include that version. I guess they call it a pre-release cut. It's like a reconstruction of an approximation of what the filmmaker's intent actually was. And that's included on a separate Blu-ray here. And that's the version I watched for my first time watch. I had never seen this film before, so you know, I wasn't sure what to expect, but it seemed like a fun little slasher. And it is. I enjoyed it. It's a real short film. The version I watched was only like 80 minutes. So you're in and out real quick, which I always appreciate with horror movies. And yeah, it was a fun little slasher. I mean, nothing crazy to write home about, but it was still entertaining and enjoyable for what it was. So yeah, Night Screams is one you might want to check out if you're into slasher movies. It's a fun little slasher. You know, it's nothing amazing, but it was entertaining and I enjoyed it. So yeah, Night Screams. And then the third movie I watched on that day was the movie They, as in Wes Craven Presents They. Now, this wasn't actually directed by Wes Craven, which I didn't realize when I was watching it until I saw the director credit come up. And I was like, oh, I thought this was Wes Craven. No, it was like Wes Craven produced it, right? It was like executive produced by Wes Craven. But I had never seen this. It was the first time viewing for me. I watched it via streaming. And this is a 2002 film directed by Robert Harmon, which I didn't even realize or plan it this way, but this is the same director who directed The Hitcher. And I've seen, 2 or 3 of the guy's films, but didn't know anything about the director, really. You know, even when I was watching The Hitcher, I had never heard of the director before, so I didn't know anything about him. So it just happened to be a coincidence that I watched another Robert Harmon film in this same batch of horror flicks. So yeah, now it was okay. It's not a film that I'll watch again, I don't think, and it's certainly not one that I would add to my collection on physical media. But it's another one of those that it was entertaining enough for a one-time view, but it's not the kind of film I would probably return to very often, if ever. So yeah, I watched That was the third film I watched on October 10th. On October 11th, I was able to watch two movies that day, both of which I had never seen before, even though one of them I actually own. But the first one I had to stream because I've been thinking about buying it on 4K. But I wanted to check it out first to see if it was something I would like. And I'm talking about Silver Bullet, another werewolf film starring Corey Haim and the mighty Gary Busey. Always love Gary Busey and the stuff I see him do. He's a real character and he's a lot of fun. But this was a fun movie. I really enjoyed it. And I will definitely be picking up the Scream Factory 4K release of this. It was something I thought about picking up before and had just not gotten around to it. It had been on my radar for a while. I think the 4K came out about a year ago, and it had been on my radar for a while, and I'd been planning on picking it up at some point, but just decided to stream it just to see if I liked it. I didn't feel like buying it right away, and I was in the mood for another werewolf movie, so I decided to just check it out, and I believe that was on Shudder, but I really enjoyed it. Great little fun, kind of a teen like werewolf type adventure, and I won't go into too much detail on that for those of you who haven't seen it. I really enjoyed this film and really just had a blast with it, so I will look forward to adding this to my physical media collection at some point. Definitely want to check out that 4K from Scream Factory. I'm sure it looks amazing. But it'll probably be a little bit before I pick it up now because I've just now seen the film, right? And usually I'm not anxious to purchase titles that I've just viewed. I kind of have to be in the mood to watch it in order to want to buy it. So it'll probably be, closer to next year before I get around to picking it up. But it is one I'm definitely going to be adding to my collection in 4K. So yeah, Silver Bullet. And then the next movie I watched that day, I finally got around to watching this one. I've been meaning to watch this one for like, I don't know, 2-3 years now. But I'm talking about Critters 2, which I have here in a Scream Factory box set, the Critters collection, right, which has, 4 films in it. But funny thing about this is that I had never seen Critters 2, even though I've had this this box set for I think a couple years now, and but I never got around to watching Critters 2. I've been meaning to watch it just to see, because I don't know if I've ever seen anything outside of this that Mick Garris has done, and I know a number of people have said this was probably one of Mick Garris's better movies, and so I had to check it out. I got the box set and I watched the first one. Like a couple times. I've watched the first one a couple times. I do like the first one, but I kept meaning to get around to watching the second one. I don't really care about the other two as much, but it was the first two that I was mainly interested in. And so I've owned this for a couple years, but just now got around to watching it, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. It's a cheesy movie, right? But it's a lot of fun. I love the giant critter ball in this. It's awesome, critter balls. You gotta love it. So I had a lot of fun with this one, and I don't know if I'm going to be watching 3 and 4 at some point or not, but I'm glad I finally got around to checking this one out. I still think the first one's better, but this one was at the very least entertaining and even fairly amusing. So I had fun with it. So yeah, Critters 2. Next up, for October 12th, I was able to watch 2 movies that day. The first of which was not a first-time view for me. It was one I had seen before, but it had been many, many years, and I didn't even really remember it all that well. And I'm talking about 1998's Urban Legend, which I did have a lot of fun with. It's a fun film. I don't know if this is something I'll ever buy for my collection, but I certainly did enjoy watching it via streaming, and just had a lot of fun with it. Now, I know I saw this movie back in probably the late 90s, around the time it first came out, on cable TV or something. I know I watched it at one point, but I didn't remember anything about it. In fact, I didn't even remember any scenes from it. So it felt like a first time watch, even though I know that I'd seen this movie before. It's one of those weird deals where you know you've seen something, but you just don't remember it very well. But this was a fun little kind of like a Scream style thriller. This was in the aftermath of Scream, so a lot of movies were coming out that were trying to capitalize on Wes Craven's what he had accomplished with Scream, so I feel like this was kind of one of those movies that kind of followed that trend a little bit. But I really enjoyed Urban Legends, so if you've never seen it, that's one I would definitely recommend checking out at some point. I may pick it up on physical media someday, but it's not like a huge priority. I could be okay owning it, but it's not something I have to have for my collection. And for now, I'm just glad I had a chance to revisit it. So yeah, Urban Legend. And then also on October 12th, I watched a movie called Tourist Trap from 1979. Now, this one also via streaming and also a first-time watch. I had never seen this one before. I've actually been meaning to watch this one for like the last 2 or 3 years, and just finally got around to it. And it was okay. This is not one I'll probably be returning to ever again. I mean, it was okay. I was mildly entertaining, but I just didn't think this one was that great. It just didn't really have enough meat on the bone for me personally. It was kind of a cheesy film, and I just thought it was, somewhat weak as far as horror entries go. So, but, I'm glad I watched it. Like I said, mildly entertained, but nothing really to write home about, in my view. So, and I believe this might actually be getting I think this might be getting a 4K release at some point. I feel like I saw something somewhere that indicated Tourist Trap might be getting a 4K or some kind of release at some point in the near future. It's not one I would buy, but for those of you who are fans of this film, you might want to look into it and see when that is. And I'm sorry, I didn't think to learn more about that before shooting this video, but I believe I saw a notification within the last week or two that Tourist Trap might be coming to 4K or getting some kind of new physical media release. So yeah, Tourist Trap, it was just okay. And then finally on October 13th, I only had time to watch one movie that day, and that movie was the new Scream Factory 4K release of Poltergeist 2. Now, this is a movie I'd seen before, but it's been a long time. And, I remembered some of it, but not all of it. But it was a fun movie. I really enjoyed this one. Of course, it's not as good as the first Poltergeist, right? But I still found it to be an entertaining film. And I knew when it was getting a 4K release, when I first heard about it, that this was one I was definitely going to want to add to my collection because I remembered enjoying it many years before when I watched it. So it was fun revisiting this one. It'd been a long time, but yeah, I had a great time with it. So, and I'm not going to say too much more about this because I think I'm going to actually include this one in my my next 4K takeaways video. So be on the lookout for that. I'll go into a little bit more depth and detail on this release in my next video. So yeah, Poltergeist 2. Okay, so let's take stock here real quick for my 31 Days of Horror challenge. The goal, of course, has been to watch at least 31 horror movies in 31 days. And so it turns out in those first 13 days of October, I was able to watch 18 movies. And out of those 18 movies, only 6 of them were movies that I had seen before. I thought it was 4, but then when I recounted them up, I realized, oh, there's a couple other movies I had seen before. So about 2/3 of the movies I watched in the first 13 days of October were movies that were new to me. And that's great, because that's one of the main reasons I like to do this challenge is to discover a whole bunch of new horror films within a short period of time. And so far, it's worked out really good. Looks like I'm on track to definitely hit my 31 and maybe even go a little bit more, maybe even get into like the 40s with my totals. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, it's actually kind of a slow start, but it actually turned out better than I thought. I'm kind of surprised I was able to watch this many movies in this amount of time, given everything that's been going on in our lives. So, but slow start to the month, but it all worked out. So yeah, 18 movies so far. And I'll probably be doing another update in about a week or so just to add to those totals and see where we're at that point, covering everything I watched after this list, right? Okay, so that about wraps it up for my horror marathon watch list for the first 13 days of October. Let me know what you think of these titles in the comments down below. Which movies do you dig? Which ones have you seen and which ones have you not seen that you're looking forward to seeing? And also, if any of you are doing your own horror challenge, your own 31 days of horror type marathon or something similar, let me know in the comments below what you've been watching. What movies have you been enjoying this spooky season so far? I always love chatting with you guys and hearing from you guys, so make sure you leave me some feedback in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you soon.